see what I have.
A very good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
How are you?
Good afternoon, sir.
I think we will be patient a few minutes, right? While others join.
Yes.
Kelvin, hi.
Hi, Dagmar.
How are you? Good?
I'm all right, yeah.
Okay.
Dagmar, we also have the president of team, Mr. Shagmugam here. Mr. Shagmugam, we have...
good afternoon, ma'am. Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
And we also have Kelvin, who is the
recording in
specialist
progress.
who will be taking the sessions. Kelvin is enterprise specialist, so he's quite experienced in the challenges that you face. So I hope this will be an interactive meeting.
Afternoon.
Kelvin?
Audio.
Video share ಆಗಲ್ಲ. Video வர மாட்டேங்குது.
A very good afternoon to everyone. We have quite a few people who have joined us already. Maybe we can start now, or should we wait for another couple of minutes? Mr. Sakine?
Yeah, we can start, ma'am.
Okay. So we'll just start the workshop now. Very good morning and warm welcome to each one of you who's present here today for this very important workshop on sustaining enterprises and business continuity planning, particularly for the small and medium enterprises in the garment sector. The COVID-19 pandemic, we know, has hit our economy very hard. MSMEs in particular, the smaller, the informal enterprises who are engaged in the lower tiers of the global and the domestic supply chains are among the hardest hit. During this pandemic, enterprises in the garment sector have struggled with cancelled orders, delayed payments, delayed shipments, loss of person days due to sickness, reduced profits, and even the survival of enterprises has been. And along with that, we also find that livelihoods of millions of people who have been dependent on MSMEs has also been threatened. Today's workshop is organized against this backdrop. The ILO's Business Continuity Planning Program aims to help SMEs in particular in the garment sector, and in this case, particularly for Tiruppur in Tamil Nadu, to develop business continuity plans which can help them deal with health and economic crises like the COVID-19 and also many other types of crises through a proper risk assessment as well as planning. And through that, they can help in reducing the impact that such crises have on the lives and livelihoods of workers, as well as the enterprises. The specific objectives of this workshop are to build knowledge of the enterprise and business continuity planning as a voluntary initiative to deal with different crises, including crisis thrown by COVID-19 pandemic or disaster recovery, crisis management and contingency planning, build knowledge on key policies to mitigate the impacts and sustain SMEs during the crisis and what SMEs can do to protect themselves in such situations, And lastly, to familiarize the enterprises to develop their own business continuity plans using the ILO tools by building on knowledge and risk assessment and develop effective risk and contingency systems in the form of business continuity plans. And this workshop and actively participating in today's workshop will help all of us to plan short-term and long-term actions to mitigate challenges and adapt current operations to the new normal that may emerge, for example, in the case of the post-COVID-19 pandemic. So with this, I would like to open up the workshop. And now I would like to request our panelists for today's inaugural session to join us. And they are all here. And
We can't hear you. You are on mute.
You're on mute, Pallavi.
yeah, hello, can everyone hear me now? I guess there was some technical issue because I was trying to mute all the participants, and in the process, I just got muted and I couldn't unmute myself. Yeah. So with this, we would like to start now with the introductory session, and I would like to welcome our director, Dagmar Walter, to please share with us her opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Pallavi, for also your words welcoming us to this workshop. And first of all, warm welcome to Mr. Shanmugam, President, Tiruppur Exports Association, and all member enterprises present here. Well, I am extremely delighted to have you, to be with you here today and participate in this very important training workshop on sustaining enterprises and business continuity planning for small and medium enterprises in the garment sector. And this is organized by the ILO Japan-supported project Sustainable Global Supply Chains. As you also know, MSMEs play a very critical role in the Indian economy. It is estimated that about 63 million MSMEs employ around 120 million workers across the country. Their contribution to the country's GDP and exports is also significant. But most of them are also susceptible to, I would say, several crises or risks, including the current health and economic crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the world of work is being profoundly affected by this global pandemic. Past experience of similar pandemics and also crises of different types have taught us that during these difficult times, it is important that jobs are preserved, enterprises remain sustainable and are supported, workers and their families are protected, in particular the most vulnerable and those in the informal economy. Now, this is because sudden disasters and crises can have a strong impact on the businesses. According to the ILO estimates, full or partial lockdown measures that were related to the COVID-19 pandemic affected almost 2.7 billion workers. And that represents around a little bit more actually than 80% of the world's workers. Enterprises too are in extreme distress, and the decline in economic activity precipitated multiple challenges for them. On the other hand, enterprises can play a vital role in responding to the crisis and in propelling a sustainable and resilient recovery. And this is what we would like to contribute to here today. So we focus on MSMEs as they are particularly vulnerable. And of course, if we compare, they tend to have fewer assets and more limited cash reserves than larger enterprises. However, the role of MSMEs in job creation is invaluable. And their sustainability actually enables the sustainability of the enterprises and workers that are connected to them in the lower tiers of the supply chains, including the home-based enterprises and the home workers. Today, you will learn about ILO tools on business continuity planning, risk assessment, and mitigation. Such systematic business continuity planning is essential for building resilient businesses. Adaptability to the changing nature of business operations can be solved through an analysis of the potential risks. Timely preparations, practical and scalable solutions are important. These can possibly also minimize the impact of any devastating crisis. Now, risk assessment and business continuity planning and management tools help enterprises put in place a business continuity management plan to ensure a pre-established level of continuity of operations after a crisis strikes. It can also prepare enterprises to manage business continuity vis-à-vis the multiple hazards that may threaten the production and delivery of services and goods because of unforeseen circumstances, emergencies, and other contingencies. Now, all of this actually aligns with the Employment and Decent Work for Peace and Resilience recommendation of the International Labour Organization. The recommendation holds the number 205, and it was adopted by the International Labour Conference in 2017. And it actually exactly deals with the situations that we are facing now with the pandemic. The recommendation provides detailed guidance to constituents on actions that should be taken in the field of employment and decent work, both to prevent and to recover from crisis, as well as to build resilience. I hope that the two-day workshop is useful to you, and based on the learnings, you can conduct risk assessments at your enterprise level and also develop a business continuity plan. As I understand, ILO will be working with you throughout the process. I also encourage you to share your knowledge, the challenges you face, and also learn from experiences. So once again, I extend a warm welcome to all of you present here today. And I do wish you fruitful interactions, and I thank you for your kind attention.
Many thanks, Mr. Walter. With this, I would now like to request Mr. Raja M. Shanmugam, the President of Tiruppur Exporters Association, to please share your opening remarks with us.
Good evening to all. Respected Pallavi Madam, respected Director Madam ILO, Ms. Dagger Walter, and respected Bharati Birla Madam. Today's workshop, actually, it's a very good initiative from ILO. I have to thank ILO for their venturing into this territory before the advent of COVID itself, because we got signed the month of November 2019, and suddenly we got developed the rough atmosphere since January 2020 onwards, and the closure did happen in the month of March 2020. And prior to that itself, we got prepared to face any eventualities of that size without knowing that we are going to face it very soon. So because that enlightenment from ILO and initiative with that foresightedness was very helpful for Tiruppur-like cluster. Because Tiruppur, as Madam has narrated, that it is comprised of micro and small establishments more in number. Because what Tiruppur has been made up so far with one phenomenon, that is yesterday's labor is today's owner. So in that phenomenon, Tiruppur has started growing organically, and still it is on that process only. So in the, for that kind of cluster, because which is so vulnerable for this kind of unknown onslaught, has to have that preparedness in place. So which ILO has initiated much in advance without knowing the fact that this kind of close down is going to come. So on that basis, on behalf of Tiruppur cluster, I have to thank ILO officials to come to this region and help us to get at least minimal preparedness to face such kind of eventualities. So in that sense, it is a very a proactive step from ILO. And as far as Tiruppur cluster is concerned, yes, this kind of ups and downs we did face since the inception of this industry in this region. But this kind of external onslaughts of this size never expected by us, never faced by us so far. And here we, because of the initial discussions what we had with ILO and its objective of preparing ourselves on disaster management and helping out each other during the time of crisis, all these facts and these proposals from ILO has a little bit prepared ourselves to face these kind of situations. And to that, we did conduct a workshop also in which we created a handbook along with ILO and T. We created this handbook and it has got circulated to all our members. And subsequently, the second practical ways of preventing these kind of disasters also got printed and circulated to all our members. So these enlightening program has helped the entire cluster to a certain extent to get prepared ourselves to face the situations and also to come out of the situations also wherever and whenever it was necessary. So to that extent, we got benefited, and still we have an ample scope to improve upon on all these angles. And we are taking all collective measures towards propagating those ideas and ideologies across the board. So that is happening in one way with full swing and full involvement. And as we all understood that this pandemic has brought a lot of crisis in all aspects. And the Tiruppur Export Association, we taken a lead role in enlightening the right authorities at right time and to bring supportive measures, policy measures onto the ground to help out the micro and small establishment to come out of the trouble. So, like for financial aspect, I could note that Tiruppur Export Association's strenuous effort has made the government to infuse fresh liquidity into the system by devising a program called ECLGS. So the export credit infusion, additional credit infusion has been done to the extent of 20% of the existing credit limit of the individual entities. So that was a very good proactive step from the government. We have to thank the government also. And that has ensured the survival of the industries to the maximum extent. And now we are reviving back to the early normal situation. And in fact, we are aiming to progress also from the earlier benchmark what we have set for ourselves. Because this industry has fortunately, after this COVID impact, a new normal has blossomed up across the globe, where the work from home culture has got evolved. So this work from home culture has brought a new prospects to this industry, because we are doing a casual wear only. So at the cost of formal wear, the casual wear business started growing upon. So now actually this is the right opportunity for Tiruppur like cluster to grab the situation, the opportunities, and we have to grow from the present level. So that is also it's happening on the other side. We are pushing our members to get prepared to scale up their programs and their facilities, whatever is required. So in that sense, also we are advocating and we are taking a step to take the industrial growth also as an important factor to take forward, and that has been done. And also we are working on TEA is working, Tiruppur Export Association is aiming to build through the support of the government, both central and state government, and along with the industrialists, in next 5 to 6 years down the line, minimum 1 lakh houses for the laborers. So that program also has been now kick-started, and we are going to showcase in the coming days the start of the program in a slow pace might be, and then it will galvanize itself and it will pick up the momentum. And that is also going to bring a solace to all the stakeholders in this industrial journey. So I wish once again the ILO for giving this moral support and technical support to handle the clusters like Tiruppur, to face the situations like this, and to come out of this kind of situation in any future point of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shubham. Now I would like to invite Bharti Birla, who's the project manager of the Sustainable Global Supply Chains in South Asia project. Please share.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dagmar, and thank you, Shanmugamji, for for the workshop. And we're very happy that T has been taking a lead role in enabling different kinds of workplace practices which promote not only safe workplaces but also promote ethical and sustainable supply chains. And Tiruppur, as you always say, Shanmugamji, that yesterday's worker is tomorrow's owner, and that is very inspiring because it allows entrepreneurship within the tea cluster, which is not seen in many other clusters, industrial clusters. For us, tea is also an important partner to build these practices not only in the member enterprises of tea, but also nurture and strengthen and handhold smaller enterprises which are supplying to team members. So this chain, as Dagmar also mentioned, is very critical because the MSME sector in Tiruppur is linked to smaller home-based enterprises, job work units, and home workers who also depend upon the sustainability of tea members who get work from the team members, and that entire supply chain needs to be sustained in any kind of crisis such as the COVID crisis, which impacted all of us and I know how much the team members had to work together. A lot of advocacy had to come in. And all of you were ensuring not only the health and safety and well-being of everyone, but also trying to see how the enterprises could be sustained, how you can do advocacy with the governments to take immediate actions to safeguard lives. We also know that these crises have demonstrated that there is also a need for longer term change to build greater systemic resilience to enable well-being over the enterprises as well as the workers who are in these enterprises and those who are connected to it. So I hope you, the member enterprises here today, enjoy the training which we are doing. As Pallavi also mentioned, what we are going to do is to look at how we can grapple the current effects of pandemic on the enterprises, especially the MSME cluster. And second, how do we encourage preparedness for future events? So today's workshop, you will hear from Kelvin, who's our specialist on enterprise, about how do you do risk assessments, how do you identify risk, how do you plan for them, and tomorrow's session would focus more on the ILO tool, which relates to business continuity planning. And what we have planned is that as you start making these plans for your own organization, ILO will be with you to handhold and strengthen the plan that you have prepared using a participatory methodology, so that you can implement and put it in place and are able to be better prepared when something like any kind of crisis strikes. So I hope you enjoy this workshop and also share your experiences. It's going to be a very participative exercise. So we would want you to share the challenges that you have faced and any contributions or lessons that you have learned during the process. With this, I pass the mic back to Pallavi to open the training program.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bharti. And with this, let's move on to the first technical session, which is on the key policies to mitigate the impacts and sustain SMEs during and after the crisis. And I would like to invite here with us Mr. Kelvin Sargent, who's the Sustainable Enterprise Development Specialist, and he will take us through the technical sessions for today. So over to you, Mr. Kelvin.
Thank you. Thank you, Pallavi, and good afternoon, Dagmar, esteemed director, and Mr. Shan Mugan, who is the president of the Tiruppur Exporters Association, and other members of the association. Good afternoon to everyone. And it's a pleasure to be with you all this afternoon in this workshop, Sustaining Enterprises and Business Continuity Planning for SMEs in the garment sector. Now, I think the issue of business continuity is very, very important, not just because of COVID, but we have had other crises in the past, and we will continue, unfortunately, to have, crises in the future. And I think we all know and we accept that SMEs in particular are really affected tremendously whenever you have any crisis. And livelihoods are affected, employment is lost, revenue is lost, and therefore we need to be able to mitigate all of the many risks which MSMEs face. And therefore the whole idea behind this workshop today is to discuss, some of these crises, for example, and the impact that they have, to see how and what are some of the areas of intervention. Dagmar talked about ILO's recommendation 205 of 2017, which is a very important recommendation that speaks to the whole issue of employment and decent work for peace and resilience. So we intend to say a bit about that this afternoon. And then we want to talk about risk and how do we assess the business. What should we do to be able to assess the risk of the business? And then, as Bharti said, tomorrow we will look at the whole question of how do we plan for business continuity. So this is what we hope to do in the next couple of days. I begin by sharing my screen. So let me share my screen with you, so I can begin the discussion. And just let me know if it is. 1 second. There we go. So let me know if it's coming.
Yes, yes. Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. Right. So I'm just trying to get it into the PowerPoint mode. Right, excellent. So I think as I started to talk about, the many different types of crisis that we may all be familiar with. I think we're all familiar with the financial crisis of 2007, 2008. And that caused businesses to lose a lot of the value of their assets. Many companies couldn't pay their debt. And of course, there was also a drop in the demand for the product or services coming out of the financial crisis. This really affected a number of companies in 2007, 2008, and I'm sure many MSMEs were also affected by the financial crisis of that time. You also have what we call personnel crisis, which is a crisis which occurs when an employee or an individual who is associated with the company is involved in unethical or what we call illegal misconduct. And we have seen some of that ever so often. The conduct of an employee or someone involved in the company can in fact create a crisis for the company. It actually affects the reputation of the company itself. And then you have organizational crisis. You have technological crisis. And I think we all accept and agree that we live in a technological driven age, and business rely heavily on the technology to perform our day-to-day tasks, our day-to-day jobs. And therefore, anything that goes wrong with the technology can seriously affect the operation of our business. So we've had technology crashes in the past. And today there are so many e-commerce sites and so many software companies that can actually, if these sites go down, it can cause companies to lose billions of dollars, huge losses, or even potential revenue. And of course, the product or service reputation of the company itself can be seriously affected. I think we all, sometimes you go to work and the internet is not working. And that in itself creates a problem, particularly for the businesses that depend on the internet to do their work on a day-to-day basis. So that's also very important. And I think the one we want to focus on today is really natural crisis. We have earthquake, of course, we all know, natural disasters like hurricanes, tornadoes, and they can significantly impact your business, particularly if your company is located where you're exposed to extreme weather. And therefore, a lot of the times you need to prepare for emergency response in the event that this unfortunate event happens and you're affected. I mean, there are many companies and there are many businesses that may live in what we call the tornado belt or the hurricane belt, or you may have a business located somewhere that is very prone to earthquakes. And it happens. I think there are some parts of India where every year you have bad weather and you have lots of rain and floods and whatnot. So, and they do impact negatively on the business. They do impact and cause business closures and job losses. So you have to be able to mitigate those kinds of risk. And now, of course, we all have COVID-19, this pandemic that has impacted not only on businesses, but organizations and families alike. And although we say the COVID-19 is a natural phenomenon, we still don't really know. Up to now, scientists don't really have all the answers. They have one idea, but they don't know what totally have caused it. They don't know where the host, what is the second host, or the second intermediary from animal to something to man. But we do know that it has impacted tremendously all over the world. And of course, there have been some, as how blessed COVID-19 has been, there have been some good points about it in that we've all learned to build remote work, and we've all learned our health protocols, and of course, business continuity, and all of these kind of issues have been some of the positive things of COVID-19. But there have, of course, been lots of negative issues with respect to COVID-19. There are, of course, some other crises, confrontational crises, workplace violence crises, crisis of malevolence, and so on, which you can always pick up in the reading. But the point is that we will always have crisis with us, but we have to be able to mitigate the risk of crisis. There's some that you don't even see at all. Some people argue that, I mean, I think the opening spokesman also said, well, we didn't even see COVID coming. Nobody actually, all the science and all the technology and whatnot that we have, we really did not see COVID happening until it really was upon us, and the impact have been devastating. So I think in terms of the impact, because one of the things we want to talk about is the crisis and impact on MSMEs. And I think there can be no doubt about it that lots of surveys have been done now by the private sector, the public sector, and they all show that the SME sector has been hit hard coming out of COVID-19. There was a survey done by Dan and Bradstreet, which showed that over 82% of the businesses have experienced a negative impact. 70% believe that it will take them almost a year or more to recover the demand which existed prior to COVID-19. And also 60% and more think that if they don't get government support, they will not actually survive. So they need government support. And in the ILO, we've done a number of surveys in the ILO in New Delhi, and ILO in the headquarters in Geneva, and in other countries. We've done a number of country surveys and whatnot. And one of the surveys which we did is the ILO Score Program survey. And what this survey showed was that MSMEs, of course, which we know represent more than 70% of global employment and 50% of GDP, they have been hit hardest by the fallout of the pandemic. Of the 1,000 companies surveyed from 8 countries across 4 continents, 70% have had to shut down, 50% temporarily closed, and 50% have closed temporarily due to reduction in orders. There have been cases of staff infections, and some have also closed permanently because of the impact of COVID. I think when we look at it overall in general, we know that number one, revenues have been affected by COVID-19, the first wave, and then you had the second wave coming, which again affected revenues because of business closures, government mandated closures, reduced demand for orders, and that would, of course, your cash flow shortages. You don't have the demand, you have cash flow shortages, and of course, the impact on the labor force has been very severe in terms of working hours. Number of companies have had to have reduced working hours. Some of them have had to have unpaid leave or reduce salaries, reduce pay, layoffs permanently. Some people have been laid off permanently and they don't know exactly when they will get a job again. So of course, the impact have been really very, very severe. Now, in the garment sector, I do know also that there have been tremendous decline in sales due to loss of orders. Adidas, Ralph Lauren, Gap, Inditex have all talked about this, even had to close down some stores. There have been shipment delays, right? Production disruption, because as I said just now, the federal government ordered businesses to close down, in order to stem the flow or the increase in infections, to mitigate that risk of less people being infected. There have been many order cancellations in Bangladesh and in India and in a number of countries. There have been cancellation of orders. Now, what I want you to tell me, if for those of you who are here, give me an idea of how your company have been affected by the COVID-19. Maybe we can hear from one or 2 or 3 persons. I'll open up the floor. Yeah? How have your company been affected? Anybody?
Would you like to the floor is open.
Anyone can share how your company has been impacted by the COVID crisis. Anyone can speak. Please feel free.
Perhaps they are very shy.
Yes, Mr. Arvind, you wanted to say something? Please go ahead.
Somebody was speaking? Am I being understood?
Mr. Saktivel, would you like to come in and would you like to share how the enterprises have been affected? Or would you suggest any enterprise to speak?
Okay, so I'll just continue. Maybe we can come back in a little while when you gather your thoughts. So we do know that the garment sector have been seriously affected. I think also to the global supply chains have been seriously disrupted in many, many areas, in many, many ways. Many of them lost orders, for example. People just did not order or cancel the orders or postpone orders. I think many supply chains, particularly the lower tiers of the global supply chains, were faced with non-payment, didn't get their money. They sent the supply, but they didn't get their money, and they didn't know when they would get their money because remember everything at one point in time, everything was shut down, and there was tremendous uncertainty all around. So they didn't know when they will get their money. This led to many closures, many businesses closed down, job losses, as we talked about. And some of the things we saw were also in terms of working conditions. You know, in the ILO, we talk about rights at work and fundamental principles and rights at work. And I think we saw, working conditions not being as we had known them, poor working conditions in some cases, dismissals, furloughs, I think job losses. The point is that livelihoods were affected in a meaningful and in a tremendous way. And some people still continue to be affected. Some businesses have not recovered. Some supply chains have closed down, particularly the lower tiers have been seriously affected. So yes, it has affected in a meaningful way. And then of course, there's the impact on trade. That trade between nations, between many countries was seriously affected because of transport, uncertainty, commodity inputs. In some cases, you couldn't get the inputs that you needed to operate the business. So the point is that global supply chains have also been seriously disrupted coming out of the COVID-19. Let me just continue in PowerPoint mode. I think I'm pressing enter instead of going back to PowerPoint mode. And then, of course, the informal sector negatively affected. We all know the impact on the informal sector, lots of closures, lots of uncertainty. We all know that India has a very large informal sector of MSMEs, and even the formal ones or the registered ones were seriously affected. We heard about our home-based workers. We know that they are home-based economic units, and then so many businesses that operate a bit informally, and they have also been seriously affected coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the point is that there has been impact of this crisis on MSMEs. And you may have other crises in different points in time, and they will continue to impact the MSMEs. So the point is, what do we do? What has happened? What has happened? What has been some of the areas of intervention or the response from, let's say, partners or constituents, as the case may be? I want to open back up the floor again to anybody who would wish to speak and to speak to this issue of what help did you get, let's say from the government or from the state government or from the authorities? What assistance did you get as a business, as a MSME? And do you think that that support that you got, was it helpful? Was it able to help you mitigate some of your risk, prevent you from closing down, helping you to pay some of your salaries? I was wondering if anybody would want to intervene here in terms of some of the intervention that would have happened and how it benefited your company. So I'll open up again.
Anyone can share how during this crisis time you have got any assistance from the government? How has it worked out for you? Yes, Mr. Krishnan. Mr. Vijay Krishnan, you want to share something about how you have been by government intervention during the crisis? Anyone else would want to share? Anyone who has been able to get any support, assistance from the government? Has there been support available from the government? Yes, Mr. Rameshan.
Yeah, good evening, sir, madam. And basically, I would like to convey that the central and state governments were kind enough to provide food grains to the employees working in our companies in this region. Importantly, we engaged a lot of migrant workers from the different parts of the country. So these people were residing in our company provided accommodations, the dormitories. So central and state governments were providing food grains, pulses, and all of the things for these people to stay with us. That is one thing coming into my mind. So thought of sharing it. So some other people can share some other experiences. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rameshan. But any other help in terms of any kind of a relief package that you got, which would help the industry in any way? Anything else which you think was made accessible to you during this pandemic? Any financial assistance in the form of soft loans or grants or something?
Those things I'm not able to recollect, but some assistance were relevant to the Provident Fund contributions. So that was some relief to the industry. So the employer cost were actually that was one thing. There is a Provident Fund is actually by the employee and employer side. So one contribution was taken care by the government. That is one thing I would like to mention. Other things, the financial part, I think some other people will be able to explain. Thank you.
I think they're very shy this afternoon, Pallavi.
Any companies got orders or grants to make masks or something during the pandemic? Any special benefits with regards to that?
And perhaps they didn't, maybe they didn't get the kind of support that we might have expected. But the point is that there have been some areas of intervention. Governments all over the world, including the government of India. In some cases, grants were offered to some MSMEs. Soft loans, I think in India, for example, I know that the government encouraged the banking sector to give the MSMEs soft loans with very low interest rates and no longer period of maturity and moratorium on the loans and so on. I remember hearing about that from the government of India. And a number of countries, they had these large economic stimulus package comprising of so many crores of dollars in the case of India. comprising of, I think I heard about pulses and food and food grains, going all the way to grants, to soft loans, to a number of ways that the government have intervened to try to assist businesses who have been affected by the crisis. And the question is, have they really worked? Have these economic stimulus packages worked in the way that we would have liked them to work? And already I'm seeing that I'm not getting a response from you, which means either you didn't get any kind of support from the packet, from the government, or you don't want to tell us. But the issue is, did the support work? Was it enough? Was it adequate for your business to remain a bankable proposition, to continue operating? Those are some of the issues that I think we want you need to reflect on in terms of the intervention. Some governments offered tariff reliefs in some countries. In some garment companies, they repurposed their production because they realized that they were not getting orders, let's say, for the clothes or for the garments that they've been accustomed to getting. So what a lot of them did is they repurposed to make masks and PPEs, the clothes, the shoes, the gloves, a number of companies actually repurposed their operations to be able to make PPEs. Now, so that's at the level of the government and the private sector and whatnot. Now, in terms of at the ILO, for example, we recognize the impact of the pandemic on people and on livelihoods. And the ILO urged governments to extend social protection to everyone and advise on measures to promote employment retention instead of people just losing their jobs and whatnot. Try to retain the jobs, short time work, for example, paid leave instead of people being sent home, and other subsidies to protect the labor markets and the economies, right? And to try to get them to be as resilient as possible and to be as sustainable as possible, particularly after the pandemic. So for us in the ILO, we are about social protection, we are about employment protection, we are about rights at work. All of these things for the ILO were critical. And I think as I said just now, we saw the impact of the rights at work during the COVID pandemic in many areas. And it is important that we remember that these things do happen in times of crisis. For the workers' organization, they have called for the workers' representatives to be involved in the processes to identify and prevent and mitigate threats to workers' health, workers' rights, and workers' welfare, because we do know that coming out of the pandemic, workers' health have been affected, have been threatened. People have to travel to get to work. There's not enough, let's say, right protocols in place in the workplace for the protection of the worker. That all of these things need to be taken into consideration. They call for the development and implementation of national, sectoral, and workplace responses. The workers' unions stress the importance of protecting workers again, including occupational safety and health, provision of protective equipment, very important, access to suppliers, safety representatives, and ensure that at least you get your workers on OSH committees, and workers whose workplaces have closed by providing pay guarantees and ensuring access to social protection. All of these things have been very, very important, and some of the responses that we have seen coming out of the crisis. Social protection important because a number of businesses and a number of companies don't have social protection or are not exposed to social protection. The workers, that is, are not exposed to social protection. And, we've seen that so many livelihoods are affected, so many people are lost, so many jobs are lost, that where do they turn to? And therefore, if you have social protection in the form of some kind of pension or some kind of employment insurance, this can help people tremendously when the factories are closed or when the jobs are lost. Then you have a kind of short-term income coming in to ensure people's livelihoods are protected, okay, to ensure that people's can survive, and that people don't go into what we call poverty or even worse, abject poverty, as the case may be. The International Organization of Employers and the International Trade Union Confederation, they actually published a joint statement on COVID-19, requesting enhanced cooperation and coordination among all actors in the multilateral system and underlining the critical need for social dialogue to control the virus in the workplace and beyond. They called for urgent actions to ensure business continuity, income security, and solidarity to protect workers and SMEs, very important, recognizing that SMEs provide jobs. So you see, you see the points being made here. One, you need the multilateral system, the UN system, all the banks and international institutions to come together and cooperate. You need discussion, protection of the workplace, all right? You need to ensure that whatever you do, businesses continue. And to do that, you need income security and some kind of solidarity as you try to protect the workers and the MSMEs. So I think the point is that there have been intervention, from the partners, from the ILO, and so on, that actually came in and put in place policy measures. Government intervened, looking at things like, number one, working capital. So that's why you find governments offered either loans or grants or some kind of tax credit, as the case may be, to protect working capital, to ensure that there is enough financing there. In a number of countries, governments pumped a lot of money into the financial system, in the banking system, to ensure that there was enough liquidity in the financial system so that, the businesses can get loans that they wanted from the banking system, to continue their operations. I think there was some interventions in some cases with respect to the value chains as well, in terms of the tiers and some kind of interventions here and there from governments in terms of the value chains. And we talked also a lot about employment, trying to protect employment, trying to protect wages, trying to protect incomes by doing a number of things I spoke to just now. And of course, what came out clearly, not only during this disaster, but we continue to see it time and time again, is the issue of social protection. You need some kind of social protection. You need some mechanism in place to ensure that when you have these kinds of crises, there is a fallback mechanism. There's something that the workers can fall back on to ensure that, like I said just now, they don't go into abject poverty. That their livelihoods are not totally lost, as we have seen in some of these pandemics, as we've seen in times when you have some of these crises, whether it's a natural crisis, whether it's a financial crisis, as the case may be. The point is livelihoods are affected. Now, in the ILO, we have a very important recommendation, which I'm going to speak to now. Recommendation 205 of 2017, Employment and Decent Work for Peace and Resilience. Very important recommendation. Very, very important recommendation, particularly in times of crisis, because it was designed to respond to the devastating effects of crisis on economies and societies. And we accept that crises do have lots of negative impacts on economies and societies. And therefore, it speaks about conflicts and disasters, but more importantly, it focuses on recovery and reconstruction in post-conflict and disaster situations, but also on addressing root causes of fragility and taking preventative measures for building resilience, very importantly. So you don't just want to take measures. Yes, you want to put the measures in place to help while the problem is there, but you want to also have measures to build resilience so that if you have a crisis again, you must be able to withstand the crisis. You must have enough specific measures in place to be able to withstand the crisis. And therefore, the strategy consists of 4 complementary and mutually reinforcing components. 1, awareness raising and advocacy. 2, policy advice, development, cooperation, and capacity development. 3, knowledge development and dissemination. And 4, international cooperation and partnerships. This is a very important recommendation, and I want to ask all of you to be able to have a look, have a read of this recommendation. You know, it's very important that you have a read of this recommendation to understand what the recommendation is telling you. So I think what we've really covered in this first session is to look at the crisis, look at the intervention, and look at ILO's recommendation to see how and what can be done, what needs to be done in times of these crises. Recognizing, as I said earlier on, that COVID-19 is just one crisis that we have, but ever so often we are faced with other crises, other disasters, natural disasters, earthquake, hurricanes, and whatnot, and you are affected. Businesses are lost, factories closed down, and you must be able to do something about it. And the whole idea behind today's workshop is, well, what can we do? Apart from all of the help that you can get from the government and all of these advocacy statements from the workers' organization and the business sector and the employers' organization and whatnot, what else can you do as a business to be able to mitigate that risk? And I think the next session will begin to deal with some of these issues. I'm going to stop there and open up the floor for any questions, any comment that anyone would like to make before we go to the next session. So the floor is now open. If there's anyone who wants to make any comment that they want to say, please feel free to do so.
Any comments, any suggestions? Anyone would like to share about the emergency credit line guarantee scheme which was started by the government? Any experience with regards to that? Anything else which you would want to share? Or any questions if you have?
Okay, so I assume that you have no questions for me, so maybe I can ask you a question. How was your business affected? If there's anyone who would like to speak, how was your business affected during COVID-19, and what did you do to recover? What did you do to survive? How did you, as we say, mitigate the risk of COVID? Would anybody like to come in?
Anyone wants to share your experience of the COVID crisis, the first wave or the second wave, how each one of you was impacted, your businesses were impacted, any losses, any other experience which you would want us to know or which you would want to share, your own experience, something which you've observed in the past year and a half in Tiruppur. How do you think, how do you really understand the resilience of the cluster in the context of the crisis? Anything, please feel free to share your experience or the experience of the cluster as you may wish to.
Are they understanding this? I assume that they cannot speak English, right?
Please go ahead. If anybody wants to share anything, even if it's just, something which you feel has been a very small experience, or which you to place before the group, any good practice which you think your unit has kind of, adopted, which you would want others to know about. Have with us over here today some of the leading knitwear units. Some of you are doing very good work during the crisis as well. So it would be nice to actually hear from you. Please do feel free to share. This is a very interactive meeting, and we would want, it's more of a workshop. So we would really encourage you to share so that others can also hear about your experiences. You can also speak in Tamil if you have a problem. We can request somebody who can translate it for us in English. Please feel free to speak.
Yes. I have a feeling that Vijay wants to say something. Vijay, you want to say something?
Mr. Krishnan, would you want to speak? Anyone else? Anything on the pandemic, your experience, anything? You have,
all right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pallavi.
So should we?
Yeah, I think they're very shy, so maybe we'll get them to talk some more tomorrow. So let's go to the second session now on what you can do, to protect yourself. So we've seen the impact of the crisis, and this is just one, but as I said, generally the impacts of on businesses. And not only are they similar, they're very harsh also and hard on businesses in terms of revenue, in terms of job losses, in terms of your supply, particularly the supply chains, the lower tiers are affected, garment sector is affected. And the point is that you don't want that to happen all the time. You want to be able to mitigate that risk. So one of the things you can do is you can do what we in the ILO call business continuity planning. You plan for something bad happening with the hope that once you plan properly, you are able to, what we say, you're able to minimize the overall negative impact of the event, the external event on your business. Or it may even be an internal event, which could also negatively affect your business. In a partnership, let's say someone can die, a partner could die, and that seriously negatively impacts the business and causes a crisis. You can have these things happening as well. So it doesn't always naturally have to be a natural disaster or some big hurricane or earthquake, but there are things within your own business that can also negatively impact the business and cause problems for you. All right, and you must be able to deal with that. You must be able to mitigate those risks. So one of the things in the ILO we talk about is business continuity planning tool. And I want to start by just showing a quick video. If Bati could show a quick 3 minutes video, and we'll go straight into the tool. So I'll ask Bati to just show you all a quick video about what we'll be talking about from now on.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so the video now. Is it audible?
Pallavi, no, you will
Yes,
have to
ma'am.
share
Yes,
the
ma'am.
audio. In the view option, share the audio as well.
No audio.
Pallavi, there is no audio. Maybe let me try Pallavi.
Okay.
Pallavi ma'am, I have a doubt. Shall I ask it?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, this is the whole idea behind the session.
Actually, so in my concern, actually, how should I control the employee attrition rate?
That's the question, how to control employee attrition rate.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it depends on so many things, really. The first thing you need to find out is, why is the rate of attrition so high? Why is the people leaving your company so? Is it due to the wages? Is it working conditions? You have to do a deep dive, an assessment then to see why it is that your attrition rate is higher than it should be. And it may very well be that the salaries are not competitive and people are getting higher pay outside your company, and because your competitors may be paying better. Very well be that maybe something in the working conditions that people are unhappy. The working hours may be too long. The work may not be as one that makes them happy. It could be a management issue, that they're not happy with the management, the way that they are treated. It could be that they feel that they don't have any right or an ability to say anything or to speak out on any issues. So it can be a number of reasons then that can lead to attrition.
Actually, the hello.
Yes.
Actually, the management and the working atmosphere is very fantastic here. So there is no issues at all. So the main thing is actually regarding the employees, if someone relieves for some other reasons, because they will start business or whatever it is. So the another person got collapse actually. So he or she, they are also thought, okay, we can relieve. So like that, I'm asking. So if that situation happens, so what I will do?
So I didn't get you. Could you repeat the statement? This company is very wonderful, happy. So you don't think it is that why they're leaving, right?
Sorry, I can't hear you properly. Hello.
Yeah. Could you again say why you said that you think that the management is okay and
yes,
company is
actually,
fantastic?
what is the problem is actually I'll just tell the situation.
Yes.
Management and the working atmosphere and then salary is all very fantastic here. So there is no issues at all, no props at all. So the issue is actually if someone relieves, the another employee got thought, okay, we can also relieve. So this is the thing. So this point, I should break the thought actually. So this is the thing actually it's happening. So if someone relieves, so the another person is thinking, so we can. relief, and then we can make a move. So this is the thought, but there is no reasons at all. So there is no pointing at all. So that is what I'm asking.
Can I also
Excuse me, can I answer? Pallavi, can I answer this? I have a small idea. Hello.
Please go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
See, I think it's better. No, you have to take an exit interview. You have to work it on an exit interview because your employee is leaving. No, if somebody is going, then again this person wants to leave means you have to take an exit interview. Why this? You have been saying your salary is okay, your working atmosphere okay, everything's okay, but your people are resigning. You have to take an exit interview either through some welfare officer in your unit, or you have to take a third party. You find out an exit interview why they are leaving. If you know individually what happens in the unit and why people are leaving, and you can over phone also you can contact your employees, those who are gone already, then you can have some ideas. And that is my suggestion.
So actually, so because in future, so it will not happen. So because we have to sustain the employees. So that is the main thing in our concern. So that is what I'm asking.
You are treated.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good point. I mean, I think you may think that salaries are great and working conditions are great, but unless you do that exit interview, unless you do what we call that survey, you wouldn't necessarily know. So you need to find out from the workers why so many are leaving. And if you, after a while, and you get the response, then you might be able to put in place some kind of measures to mitigate that risk. Yeah.
Sure.
Kelvin, can
Thank
I
you,
also comment?
Yes.
Actually, we've been working with Tiruppur factories and with garment workers, and also last I wanted to ask if there are a lot of migrants also part of the workforce who's leaving. Is that also an issue, or they're local? My question was: are your employees local people, or are they also migrants who are leaving?
Actually, our staffs are local only.
Local only. Okay.
Yes. So the
Right. One of the challenges when we were working in factories of Tiruppur and also Bangalore, we saw that there are even when the workers are getting Provident Fund and ESIs, they are not aware of the salary slips, how to read salary slips, and there are agents who are standing outside the factory telling them, look, in your salary slip it is written whatever is the wage, but how much are you getting in your hand? And many times the workers don't understand the contributions which companies are making towards Provident Fund and to the ESI for their health benefits. They also do not know that the ESI is not just for them, but it can be also used by their family members. I mean, I'm talking, for example, in case of migrants, if a migrant worker is working in your enterprise and you are paying the ESIC, the family of the migrant worker who's back in Odisha or Jharkhand can also use ESI contribution. Most of the workers are not aware. They're also not aware about how to read the salary slip and how much you are actually contributing to Providence Fund. So if you're deducting that money, the worker needs to know that you are putting another X amount. If it is being deducted from worker, another X amount is being put by you in the Provident Fund. So there is a lot of saving that is happening. And we saw many agents also standing outside the factories telling the workers, see, you're getting less. Your payslip says more, but you're getting less. So there was also pulling of the workers that we saw. In case of migrants, we also saw that, after a few months, they want to go back and be with the family because they don't they don't socially get gelled into the process. So if social networking is allowed, they're allowed to meet with other people. They slowly settle in and become part of the enterprise. And many enterprises which enabled a lot of welfare activities allowed migrants to get together. The retention rates were very high, especially when there are young girls, 18, 19 years old girls who are being brought from skill training institutes. So maybe you can take a look at as suggested by Kelvin and also suggested by other colleagues. do an sort of in-depth exit interview to find out what the real issue is. It could be something very simple that can be solved at the level of the enterprise. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, if, there is no problem at all for relieving and all. So, but in future, so we will not sacrifice more employees from our country. So that is the main issue I'm telling.
Okay. Shall we try the video again, or do I continue?
From my side, that's it, sir. Because this is the main challenge. Actually, I just want to know how to handle. So, but right now it's not happening yet. So I just want to know. So I just want to learn. So how to control the employee attrition rate. So because the HR main job is that is the thing.
Yes.
So I just want to know that thing actually. So because till now I didn't implement it in practically. So on my work actually. So I just want to learn, so and then I have to execute hereafter only. So if the situations happens.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Could everybody hear it and understand it?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Over to you, Kelvin.
Thank you, everyone. So I think what the video actually showed is what we'll be doing in the next couple of sessions. It's all about business, what we call business continuity planning, of which there are two aspects to it. One is you have to be able to assess your risk. So the first thing we'll talk about this afternoon is how do you assess your risk? Our exercise on risk assessment, which I will run through with you. And then we will leave the template with you for you all to be able to do it in your own time, to see what is the risk of my business, failing, and so on and so forth. And having been able to identify the risk, then you must be able to mitigate that risk. So what must you put in place in order to continue in your business operation? Okay, let me again share my screen. Just give me a moment so I can again share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the first thing you want to be able to do is, as I said, do a kind of risk assessment. You must be able to conduct a kind of risk assessment to be able to see what is happening in your business. Okay? The first risk to any business is people. All right? Because you have employees that will be working for you. And you yourself as a manager, you're a person, so there's a risk to you as well. So in times of crisis, the first question that you need to look at is the people risk. Is the working environment safe? And there are a number of questions that you need to ask under the people risk assessment. Okay? In the case of COVID, we came up with this template, for example. The first question is that there are current personal safety risks, such as high number of COVID-19 cases in the geographical area of your operation. Are there a lot of persons who are affected by COVID? Is it physically unsafe for workers to come and go from the workplace? For example, if you're using public transport, then there are issues there. Not everybody have a car or private transport. Some people have to take public transport. So that's another risk there. Has there been an increase in sick leave or absenteeism? Okay, can we get people to work from home? Do you have sufficient sanitation facilities, like, for example, washing facilities, sanitizers, hand gels, gloves, masks, etc.? Very importantly, coming out of COVID. And maybe so many businesses, I remember, had to actually go and, set up better washing facilities. Many businesses had to put pipes and tanks and whatnot to at least ensure that the facilities were there. For example, the vehicles that you use on the business, they have to be sanitized. Okay? Workers have increased their family care responsibilities due to school closures or sick family members. Again, we saw that during COVID, many people had to stay at home. Many people had to stay at home and take care, either because, as we all know, since COVID started, and only until recently in some cases, children have been home. They've been home, they've been doing online classes, they've been doing online schooling, and that means that you have to have supervision for them. So many people had to stay at home to take care of the children, or you may have sick family members, okay? Or internal transmission by COVID-19, the stress of the working environment, has the discriminatory or stigmatization behavior led to threats or intimidation of fellow workers? Has there been close physical contact with customers or suppliers? So all of these would be some of the risks that you have to answer yes or no. Workers having trauma, getting sick, proximity of the workplace. All of these, I'm saying, working from home is not possible. My business does not have a process for reporting to public health authorities any known or suspected instances of workers or the public confirmed with COVID-19 on the business premises. So these 20 questions that we posed were all about people and the risk associated with having people working with you. Very important question, and you answer yes or no. And then you go on to the second part, which would be processes. Because you have people, you have processes. One kind of process is your building and machinery. For example, a question we ask is, you have faced difficulties accessing the necessary equipment and machinery to run your business from suppliers? Yes or no? Some people have. Because of COVID, there were many closures, so many closures. People couldn't get their equipment, they couldn't get machinery to run their business. Some people had disruptions or significant delays to support services that they needed for maintenance of key equipment and machinery. Another question that you have to ask, is your business insured? Very important question. How many of you have insured your business? How many of you? You have a business, it's running and it's going nicely, but do you have insurance? Very important question, because when the crisis comes and you don't have any kind of insurance, because what insurance is, it's the pooling of risk, that you pay out some money every month or every week or once a year, and it's setting aside some money in the case that something unfortunate happens. And a lot of the times if there's nothing unfortunate happens and you are thankful. But there are times when something unfortunate can happen, and this is where the insurance can actually come in a meaningful way and help you to maintain your survivability as a business, to maintain the livelihood of yourself and your workers as well. So for the building and machinery, the insurance and the equipment and the machinery, you need to know about that. Okay? Then the other important point is about stock and raw material. Do you import your raw material? How much is imported? Do you have delays in securing raw materials or necessary production input through the port? Because if the port is closed and you can't get your goods to come through, then you have a problem there. You have a risk there. Do you have difficulties in securing your key stock and raw materials? Is your government or is your business negatively impacted by increased government restrictions, health checks, delay in delivery of products coming and going to your premises? This is a big thing now that, you know, everything has to be checked. There has to be a lot of health checks. And whereas in the past, you didn't have to set aside time for that, now you need to set aside a lot of time for that. And then is your main stock or raw material in one location, or do you have to go to many different locations to get your main stock and raw material? So all of these things you have to look at now in terms of another kind of risk, which we're talking about. That risk there is known as the processes. You look at the people, the processes. Profits is another thing that you have to look at. Okay. Are there disruptions to your clients' ability to buy your product? Are there restrictions of movement so that people can get to buy your product? Okay. What percentage of your business serves non-domestic market? In other words, exported. Are these markets located in higher or low-risk countries? Okay, have there been a decrease in sales in these markets? So again, these things will affect your profit, your markets, okay, your clients' ability to buy your product, the ability to move from one place to the next, the ability to export. All of these things will affect your profit. If your business is heavily involved in exporting and you can't get your product out, okay, the country is locked down, the ports are closed, clients can't get your product, then obviously your profits will be affected. So you need to take a look at the risks associated with your profits as well. Then you have your suppliers. Most people who have business, will have supplier, unless you're offering some kind of service. And even if you operating or offering some kind of service, then you will need to get some things, whether it's the internet provider, or whether it's electricity, or whether it's people coming to your factory to bring something for you to do your service better. The point is, you will always have some kind of supplier. So have there been disruptions in your suppliers to supply inputs to your enterprise? Is it because of government restrictions? Is it because of the route to get to your business place? Do you have alternative suppliers that provide goods and services in case of your disruption, competition? Do you rely heavily on foreign suppliers for your? Some people do 75% or more of their supplies comes from outside. So you need to look at all of these things. Again, this is another kind of risk that you need to look at. Okay, the risk of profits in terms of your market and your suppliers. Another risk is in terms of society. Okay, so social intolerance and prejudice. Or has there been media environment negatively affecting the working environment? Then there's the economic environment itself. Okay, as we all know, COVID-19 impacted on economic activity. Okay, and therefore that could have impacted on the business in which you operate, or the unemployment rates in the markets you operated could be increasing. Has there been increased criminal activity in your enterprise, which has affected you? Or has there been an increase in the price of inputs and other goods required to conduct your business operations? This would be your economic environment. And all of these things, the economic environment, the society, the suppliers, the markets, will all impact on your profits, and you need to conduct this part of the risk matrix as well for your profits. Then there's the partnership. Do you have public utilities, water, electricity, and so on? Is it affecting you, affecting your business? Okay. Has there been significant or ongoing disruptions to key public utilities? Has there been change in the cost related to public utilities? Okay, all of these things you need to look at. Customers, competitors, and financial providers, you need to look at that and the risk associated with that. Public infrastructure, telecommunications, roads, and ports, you need to look at all of these points we have there, you need to look at. And of course, the political and the regulatory environment. Okay, is there a change in regulation or the law that impacts on your business enterprise or the markets that you operate in? Sometimes a government of another country that you are exporting can pass a law that can affect your business. They could increase the tax on your product coming in. And that, by doing so, you may have to increase your price, and that could affect your business and your profits. Or there could be increased uncertainty in the policy or the regulatory environment that could negatively impact your enterprise in the markets you operate in. You're not sure. What is the regulation? What is the policy on a particular matter? Should this thing be taxed or not? Should I pay tax on this good or not? Will I get the raw material for this product or not? What is the view of the government on this thing? And it can change from time to time and can also affect your business, right? Laws, regulations can also impact on your workers. Is there a minimum wage? Is there not a minimum wage? Okay, has the government done something to impact on people at work? So all of these things you need to look at. Have they introduced subsidies on rent or wages? All right, all of these things you have to look at. Then, of course, therefore, the overall health of the business, state of emergency, freedom of movement. Do I have a contingency plan in situations of crisis? So I'm saying that all of this thing here is what we call your risk assessment. From the people, okay, to the processes, okay, to the profits, to the partnerships. And when you talk about partnership, you talk about utilities, there's a risk there. There's a real risk that you may not have water. Let's say you're doing a garment in a garment factory, and as we all do know that the garments, I once visited a garment factory, I think in Pakistan, and I went to the washing area, after the thing is all made and whatnot. I went to the washing area and lots of water is used there. Lots of water is used in the washing area. So what happens if you don't have the water to be able to wash out the garment before it is finally ironed and so on and made prepared for the market? Then there's a real risk there to your production and to your delivery. So the partnerships you look at, all right, all of these things you need to look at. And then at the end of the day, you have what we call a total risk score, okay, which should add up to 61. People 20, processes 8, and this is the weight that you give now to each of those areas under the risk assessment. People will always be important, so that's why it carries the most weight. Then, of course, your partnerships, because if you don't have the utilities and the water and the communications and whatnot, obviously a business wouldn't be able to function properly. And then you have the profits and the processes. And then how do you interpret your risk profile? The score does not rate whether your enterprise is good or bad. It's simply a benchmark that tells you about the vulnerability of your business to, in this case, COVID-19. All right? And in order to check your resilience and to see if it can be improved. Most importantly, it will tell you where you are most at risk. Is it your workers, your supply chains, your reliance on third parties? And then you check your score. So if you get a score between 40 to 61, it means that your enterprise is highly vulnerable to the negative impact, in this case of COVID-19. Your enterprise is quite likely to be severely impacted, which may cause long-term disruption in the event of a deterioration in the situation. And therefore, your next plan of action should be to identify whether you are most vulnerable to an internal or external threat and take measures to reduce that risk and vulnerability to COVID-19 again in this case here. So that's very important. If you get a very high risk, it means that you're very vulnerable. And you need to treat with that vulnerability. Okay, you need to identify where you're vulnerable. Is it internally? Is it externally? Is it from my outside markets? Is it from my suppliers? Or is it from my workers inside the company? Because you need to put in place measures to deal with that. If you get between 20 and 40, we say, despite having taken some action to increase preparedness, your enterprise remains vulnerable. So you need to understand whether your threats are internal or external and make sure to prioritize your elements of vulnerability when establishing your business continuity planning. So you need to do an assessment, a SWOT as well, to see what the threats are, what are the internal threats, what are the external threats, because it means that you are still vulnerable. All right, and as you do your business continuity planning, you must be able to reduce the extent of that vulnerability. And if you get 0 to 20, a risk of profile of 0 to 20, it means that you're on the right path, you're becoming more resilient, but there are still some areas where you could reduce your vulnerability. And therefore, as you go towards the business continuity planning, you want to be able to manage the risk of your internal or your external threat to such an extent that your business remains resilient and your business is able to survive. So this is in a nutshell how we will want you to do the risk assessment. This is in a nutshell how you will conduct the risk assessment on your business. And it's called a self-assessment. It's a self-assessment that every one of you who have a business can do. I mean, we've used COVID-19 here, but you should know that this risk assessment can be done for any kind of disaster. You just need to change your wording and move around some of the ideas here and there, but the risk will always be the same in terms of the people, the processes, and so on and so forth. Those risks will always be the same, all right, in order to ensure that your business is able to survive. And it's always important that you establish this, what we say, this risk profile. Because the risk profile gives you a good idea of the level of risk, how you are exposed as a business, how high you are exposed. Am I very exposed? Am I not exposed too much? And what can be done given the level of exposure? Then, of course, when you do the business continuity planning, which you will do tomorrow, then you'll be able to mitigate that risk, given that you've been able to identify it when you did the risk profile. Okay? So again, let me see if there are any questions, given what we have talked about here. Whether the second question is whether anyone who would be here today, whether any of you have ever conducted this kind of risk profile on your business. Anybody? Yeah. Has anyone ever conducted this kind of risk profile on their business? And if you have, what have you learned? What has been the outcome? Anybody?
Anyone would like to share if you have ever done a risk assessment of any sort in your company, in your unit, or you have been part of a risk assessment exercise before? Please share.
We have a lot of shy people here today.
Yeah. Please go ahead. If anyone has ever been part or done a risk assessment, or if you don't want to speak out, you can also type in the chat box. If you have ever been a part of any risk assessment, and what do you feel about it? How do you understand it? Okay, so we have a response saying not yet.
Okay.
Means, yeah, not so far.
Not so far.
Any responses? Yeah, any other responses?
So what probably I would want you all to do for me, let's call it homework then. For tomorrow is what you can do is, I assume that they have been given the self-assessment template, Pallavi. Have we shared the template with them? I think
Yes, we just shared. Bharti
yes,
has just shared the downloadable format of the template.
Right. So what I want you all to do for me is to download the link and do a self-assessment for your homework tonight. This is your homework tonight. And tomorrow morning when we start, I want maybe 2 or 3 volunteers to come up and tell me what you found out about your company, having done this kind of assessment. Okay? This is the assignment that I will leave with you, that I want you all to do for me for tomorrow. Right? Do the assessment, download the template, go through it, because it's very important to do the risk assessment. Right? In life, there are always risk. Right? That's why we say, even when you invest, there's risk. When you invest money, whether it's in, let's say, stocks and shares or some other kind of financial instrument, there's a risk. Because what happens is you will win some and you will lose some. So we say investment is a fair game. If you have a business, it's a risk. What can happen in the business is that, one, you cannot do very well, or you cannot do very well, or very importantly, you could be doing very well and then something happens, some external force, some external factor comes and seriously affect your business over which you had no control. Over which you had no control. You didn't even see it happen. And this is what normally happens. The business is doing very well. You have a hurricane, the roof of your business blows off, or the walls fall down, or you have an earthquake, and everything falls down, and there's no continuity planning because you didn't do any kind of assessment. Okay? Or in the case of COVID-19, we saw many businesses have been affected for so many different reasons. So we have to get into the habit because we put a lot of money. All of you, I imagine, would be either in some kind of business or you're a member of the organization that is involved in business. So you put a lot of money in what you do. And you have to be able to protect or to, as we say, mitigate that risk in case of something bad happening, a natural disaster or some other phenomena, something bad, even internal to the business, someone dies who is an important person in the business. And I have seen cases where once the most important person in the business is no longer around, the business also fails. And that shouldn't be allowed to happen. So I'm saying that it is important that you put so much money in your business, you put out so much money and resources, you spend money on equipment, you spend money on capital, buildings, okay, raw material and whatnot. And then, so therefore you must be able to protect it in times of uncertainty. You know, and this assessment, what it does, it allows you to have a good idea of whether you are doing okay or not by doing this risk profile, you know, of your business. And I think I will commend it to all businesses and most MSMEs to be able to do this self-assessment, all right, to be able to see where you are if something happens. In other words, you must be able to establish your risk profile. You can even do it in your own personal life as well. Of course, the ideas and the matrices will be different, but in your own personal life, you look at your health. What happens if I get sick? What will happen to my income? What will happen to my family? If I have children at school and my earnings decline, what will happen to them? Will they be able to be comfortable? Have I done anything to mitigate the risk? So therefore, what do? I take out health insurance. I take out, you know, some kind of health plan or something in case something happened to me. I have a pension plan. I have an annuity. You know, you do things in your personal life to mitigate the risk of something negative happening to you or your family. So in the case of your business, you have to be able to also do certain things, but you must be able to measure and understand what to do, all right, in case that something negative happens to your business. And this is the whole idea behind the risk profile self-assessment. So that's your homework for tonight. Do the self-assessment, and then we will have a look at it tomorrow to see what you come up with. And don't be shy tomorrow. I want you all to talk some more tomorrow. I know you're probably a bit shy today, but I want you all to talk some more tomorrow to tell me what was the result of your risk profile, what is it telling you, okay? And then we will talk tomorrow now about what can be done to mitigate that risk, you know, of your risk profile, so to speak. All right? So I'll stop there for today. I don't know if there are any comments, any questions, but I'll stop there for today. And I think we can continue tomorrow. I'll open up the floors now if there are any questions or comments that you wish to make.
Before we close today's meeting, if anyone has any comment, any suggestion, any feedback, any clarification. So I think the very important takeaway is that we need to be able to do this risk assessment at our end and make a presentation here tomorrow. That will give us a hands-on experience on, you know, how we can really do this in our own enterprises, and we can also learn from each other's experience when some of us share this tomorrow.
Yes. Okay.
Should we close then, Kelvin?
Yes, I think this is it for me today. So I will hand it back to you, Bati. I don't know if you want to say housekeeping or anything before we end today, and then we will pick up here tomorrow at 10 o'clock, I think. Over to you, Patty.
Thank you so much, Kelvin. I think today everyone here has looked at risk assessment and we expect them to fill it up. I hope all of you will be able to look at this questionnaire, see in your own enterprise. You can also talk to other people in the enterprise and see if all these measures or all these risks you had accounted for before, or are they new. You can also suggest if this list of risk metrics misses something which is very important for Tiruppur cluster. There could be very specific things which you are facing, which may not be included in the list. So it will be good to also discuss those challenges. The idea of this risk assessment to open up the mind and open up to what all we really need to do before we actually move on to design a business continuity plan. So for tomorrow's session, I think it will be very important for you to actually take a look at this list and come back tomorrow and share what you thought of the list and where is your score. Do the scoring. It can be a very simple tentative scoring, doesn't matter, but we will have time to do it more thoroughly. But for the sake of the exercise tomorrow, just do what you feel based on your perception, and let's come back tomorrow with filled lists so that we can move to the next step. I think with that, we should close the meeting. And I thank you, Kelvin, for your time, and also Dagmar and Pallavi for all the hard work, and Mr. Shangmugam and Shaktivelji, who's been helping us organize these workshops for you. As I said, as part of the workshop, we will be also hand-holding you in the next couple of days to develop a proper risk as well as a business continuity plan, which can be used by your own enterprise, and this mitigation happens. So I think with that, we will close. Over to you, Pallavi.
Thank you so much, Bharti. So I think we will then close today's session. If anybody from T would want to say something, if Mr. Shaktivel is here, if anybody from T would want to share anything, otherwise we'll close the meeting and we will now meet tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
We wanted Shaktivelji to say a few words in the end, Pallavi.
Yeah, if Shaktivelji is here, maybe you could just say a few words. Maybe they are busy. That's my sense. He had also pre-informed that at this time.
Okay. Okay.
Might be busy. Shaktivelji, are you with us? So I think we'll then close the meeting for today and let us meet again tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock sharp, and we will take this forward from here. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelvin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pallavi.
Thank you.